Hi, I'm Starlet Baker, the Executive Director for Strongwater Farm. I really can't get over me saying that. That's so awesome. Anyway, so we're looking a little bit behind the scenes at horse usage, and I can think of no better person to be able to explain that than you, Miss Elena. Yes. I know that you take care of a lot of things behind the scenes.
Yeah.
You are very much that quiet professional who just handles stuff on a regular basis.
Yes.
Things like first aid, things like horse usage, and all the other stuff. But today, what I would love to understand, like genuinely understand, is, and explain to the audience, is horse usage. How are horses assigned? Mm-hmm. What is the, I guess, the capacity, or how is that even defined, as far as like how many times a horse can be put into the program hours during the day, throughout the week, and like all of that stuff.
Right.
Right. So help us understand.
Of course. So it's really something when you first come here, you don't really think about what goes into getting a rider on the horse and which horses are in which lessons. But it really starts off with clients will give their registration, and we have weight limits for each horse.
Right. And then how is that defined?
So the weight limits are defined with our vet.
Okay.
They have a certain formula for length and width of the horse.
Okay.
And then they divide it by 20%, and that gives you their max weight limit.
I love that.
But then age also plays a factor, or previous injuries. Okay. So since a lot of our herd are older, we do lower it a little bit.
Right.
But that's how we get that number.
Okay.
And then as far as usage, PATH actually has standards for that.
Okay.
So that gives us a nice roadmap on how to figure that out.
But that's a lot easier when we have a roadmap that we have to follow by anyway.
Definitely.
All right.
So their standards are no more than 6 lessons a day.
Okay.
No more than 3 consecutive hours.
Now, is conditioning factored into that?
I'd have to double check on that. Mm-hmm. We personally here do not factor that in.
Okay.
So I'm not sure about PATH.
Okay. All right.
But they say that for their breaks in between the lessons, if you have them, they need to be untacked, untied, and have access to water. Okay. So that gives us our basics there. Okay. At Strongwater, we bring it back a little further. So we say no more than 3 lessons a day. Okay. No more than 2 consecutive lessons a day. Okay. And then breaks in between lessons would be untacked, untied, water, and hay. Good. And of course, if they have to do 3 consecutive, like if another horse gets injured and we need someone to step up, we try to do 2 mounted and 1 unmounted, just to balance it off. Okay. Yeah.
No, it's good. So like if the standard out there is to say no more than 6 lessons a day, but we maintain below that standard, right? Yeah. Kind of more stricter guidelines. Yeah. And I guess that leaves a little bit of room for the conditioning and exercises and stuff. And I definitely appreciate how you defined the untacked. What else did you say? Sorry.
Untied.
Untied, and then access to water?
Yes.
Okay. All right. And that's great with the way that we have things set up in the lower barn, which is primarily where the lessons. Yes. So kind of tell us a little bit of how that lessons, staging the horses there, kind of helps to that benefit.
Yeah, so we thankfully have 3 big holding stalls down there. So we have the hay and water in there, and then they're big enough that the horse can kind of move around freely. And that's great because it's right in the lesson area. So if a horse has 20 minutes between a lesson, you just put them in there. They can sit comfortably, and then they're right there for you for the next one.
Okay, good. Now, I know I've heard some conversations to say, okay, like sometimes we'll keep a horse down there a little bit in between lessons instead of trucking them all the way up in between a short amount of time and then trucking them all down. So that's good on that.
Definitely.
All right, what else?
So the way we do it here, we try to keep it as organized as possible because we have 16 horses and it's a lot to keep track of. So we do it weekly. We see their total weekly usage to make sure the numbers aren't too high. And then we break it down by daily usage. So we make sure we're within that 3 lessons a day capacity. And then it is also broken down by what kind of lesson. So we got mounted, unmounted, veteran, and different programs, which also helps with grants because there are certain programs that we get grants for. So it helps us know how many hours.
No, I love that. I love that. Now, sometimes I'll hear that a horse is off for that day.
Yes.
So elaborate a little bit on that.
Yes. So like the path standard said, they let horses be used 6 days a week. We only let horses be used 5 days a week. So each horse has 2 off days. It's just their day to be a horse. They're not doing any work. They can just stay in their paddock all day and not have to think about anything.
Kind of gives that mental reset.
Yes, definitely. And it's definitely much needed because it's a hard job they have, really.
It is. It is. You know, we've seen some of the horses, like, you know, some of them have like really high energy. And of course, if they're in a more challenging therapeutic lesson, they have to be very still for that. And so that's a lot of hard work, even for like as a person, right? Just to stay still, like that's kind of a challenge.
Exactly.
So you talked a little bit about the horse being assigned to a certain type of lesson. Is there anything else that you can kind of expand on that a little bit?
So you really look at the temperament.
Okay.
Obviously, all our horses here are great.
Yes.
That's why they're here.
That's why they're here. They passed their trial.
Yes. But some do better with certain groups of people. If you have a very fidgety person or someone whose balance isn't the best, we might choose someone like Shelly, who just doesn't care what's going on around her. She'll stand through anything.
Yep, right there.
Yep.
Sorry. I was looking for her.
Versus, you know, Enzo, if he has an unbalanced rider, he might be a little more uncomfortable. And then also unmounted lessons, some horses do much better in those. Like, well, they all do great in unmounted, but some are happier to stand than others. Some like moving, some like just chilling. So we try to match up with the personalities.
King is definitely a very chill horse.
Yes.
Yes.
So King and Twinkle, they do great in the veteran lessons because they're just so chill.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, that's good. That's good. Now, what about whenever it comes to some of our lessons that have like a lot of extra toys or anything else that's involved in that? Does that kind of get factored into what, because some participants need that extra stimulation, right? So does that get factored into it too?
Sometimes, yeah.
Okay.
We try to, across the board, make sure they're all good with the toys because you never know what lesson they're going to want to introduce something. So we want them to be comfortable and the students to be safe. But I'm thinking back to some previous horses we had who were a little more nervous with like paper and stuff. So if there was a particular student who would do a lot of games like that, we would think to use a different horse.
Okay. Now, what about the lift?
Yes,
the Hoyer lift.
The lift. So that is a newer addition here. So it's still ongoing with which horses have passed that trial. Most of them have done great. Shelly, Tinder, they don't care at all.
Of course.
But then there's a few, I think Enzo we're still working with.
Yeah.
Freddie, just making sure that they're truly comfortable with it.
Yeah, because it's definitely a higher stakes there for those lessons, for sure. All right, so no more than 3 lessons a day, right? No more than 2 back to back.
Yes.
And whenever they're on a break, they're completely untacked, untied, access to water.
Yes, very important.
Learning. And then for the horses down in the lower barn for a little bit, they generally have access to hay, kind of have that moment to reset.
Yep.
What else about horse usage do we really take in consideration here at Strongwater?
I feel like the biggest thing for us is just we do have an older herd. So we're trying to keep in mind that they're slowing down a little, so we don't want to make them work too hard, but also keeping in mind that keeping them moving is keeping them healthy.
Yes.
Yes. So
I love that.
That's oftentimes where the conditioning comes in, is giving them that space to work their bodies in a different way. So yeah, just trying to keep them happy and healthy.
Well, awesome. Well, thank you so much, Elena. Definitely appreciate your time. All right, audience, appreciate your interest, appreciate your time. Make sure you like, subscribe, and share with a friend. Take care.